Okay, so I want to take this opportunity to thank the Cormack Adjudication Committee, as well as the Department of Linguistics, in particular, our chair, Dr. Panagiotis Papas, and also Dr. Marie Monroe, who wrote the nomination from my department. So thank you very much for that. And thank you also to all of those who've shared their ideas and strategies for teaching over the years, including my colleagues here at SFU, Ashley Ferris-Trimble, Yue Wang, Heather Bliss, and Meg Grant. Okay, so my talk is entitled, Why Do We Care About Teaching? Because that's what, as you know, that's what we were asked to prepare a talk about. But my alternate subtitle is taking a cue from Dr. Strangelove. So it's, or How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love What I'm Calling the Anti-Keener. Okay, so what does that mean? So if you were to ask me what I cared about maybe at the beginning of my career when I was first beginning to teach, I think what I might have said is something like, well, I love languages, I love learning about languages, and I'm sort of interested in and excited by those students who also love languages, right? It's those students what we now refer to in Canada as keeners, and this is taken from urbandictionary.com, which I didn't know was a word until I moved to Canada. So this is in fact a Canadian slang word. And a keener refers to an individual who's eager to demonstrate knowledge or participate enthusiastically in school, church, seminars, etc. Right. So often keeners are associated with nerds or smarty pants, or in a more negative connotation, perhaps brown noser. And I think we are all very familiar with keeners because many of us are keeners. That's how we ended up in the position that we're currently in. And I think I don't speak for just myself that I love teaching keeners. I mean, these are the kinds of students that we all love to have in our class. They sit in the front row. They're really enthusiastic about asking questions. They often end up being part of your lab or helping you with research or doing some kind of individual projects that go beyond the course. And these are just fabulous students. And over time, I realized, of course, that it's not just about the keeners. There are also other students who, let's say, are not as eager to demonstrate their knowledge or participate enthusiastically in classrooms. And these students can also be really wonderful, incredible, smart, bright students. But let's say they might have increased focus on evaluation metrics. So you might hear things like, is this fact that I find super interesting, is this going to be in the exam? Or things like prioritizing professional over personal kinds of goals with respect to their learning. So asking whether or not this kind of thing is useful for getting into grad school, finding a job, etc. These are the kinds of students who might pose these kinds of questions. And I will admit that when I first began to teach, I would often find this as not an opportunity, but rather something kind of annoying, right? And this talk is about how I learned to stop worrying and love what I'm calling these anti-keener students. So I'll sort of summarize my sort of 3 general strategies I found helpful for learning to love the anti-keeners. One is that anti-keeners are there to remind me that foundational knowledge that we're teaching, it should seem relevant to students. A second piece would be that when we practice this kind of foundational knowledge, that practice should be engaging. That's what these students are here to remind me of. And when we apply this kind of foundational knowledge, it should be really flexible. Okay, so let's begin with that first point. Another way of phrasing this in less formal language would be something like, don't proselytize, just humanize. And so I'll give you an example. In one of my classes, which is neurolinguistics, there's a module on aphasia, which, as many of you may not know, it's basically what happens when you lose the cognitive function of language, often after a stroke or some kind of traumatic accident to your brain. Now, when you look at a textbook, the classic module on aphasia begins with things like Paul Broca, 19th century models of language networks in the brain, these kind of brain diagrams. And these are things that I actually find really, really exciting. I mean, it's so amazing that in the 19th century, given how few tools were available to scientists, they were already able to build these kind of pretty accurate models of language in the brain. I will admit, though, that these kinds of things, brain charts, this kind of historical figure with these amazing, side chops, these aren't very relevant or relatable to many students. And so now when I teach this same module, I try to humanize this in a way that is appealing not just to the keeners, but also to, let's say, the anti-keeners. So for example, this section or this topic is really relevant to the idea of recovering from any type of stroke, which is often associated with a loss of language function. And so I'll often begin this module with a video showing people who are from our time period, from all different types of walks of life, just talking about their surviving a stroke. Practice should be engaging, so this stuff matters. And one tool I find that's really helpful for this is if we're able to build in an experiential learning part of our course. And so this isn't always something that's going to help learning something about the concepts, but I think it does help with motivation and appreciation of the course content. And so, for example, here's a picture from 2 of my students from a different class going to Science World and doing a project with actual kids who are going to the museum and learning. And here they're teaching this kid a kind of language game. Another way I might do this is I sort of try to stay on trend. So the headlines these days, sometimes they're just beyond, it's better than art. So here is this kind of Elon Musk, who's this, caricature, and students really, they find, nobody might agree with what Elon Musk is doing, but certainly they find his kind of status as a kind of a caricature kind of entertaining or fun. And so you can build exercises, around some topic related to these kind of news items. And thirdly, applying things, the application of these ideas should be flexible. So every student has their own story. Every different kinds of exercises are going to have different results. And so there's a variety of formative evaluations that I try to use in my classes. So whether it's going to a museum and doing a demonstration with the kid, creating your own podcast about a specific topic, maybe just one episode instead of a whole series, doing demos in class, doing 2-stage quizzes, manipulating data. These are all different kinds of strategies. And the key here is that you want to keep it variable so that somebody who's not maybe initially interested in this topic is going to find that one activity that's going to resonate with them. I will say, and this is a topic that might be interesting to discuss in that group period, is that one thing I've come to recognize maybe over the last couple of years is that making these kind of variable evaluations, like giving these museum visits, having students do it for credit, maybe helps some students more than others, especially those students who are maybe more privileged backgrounds and have had more chance to volunteer, to work with kids. And so I try to keep summative evaluations more consistent, so more traditional style kinds of things. And that's something that I'm still struggling with and trying to figure out the best way of accommodating this type of variability. In the future, when I'm thinking about it, is how to align EDI goals with course structure and content. So acknowledging that every student has their own story, so how do we harmonize students' own experience and backgrounds with content that is often quite dated? And so most of the material that I end up teaching in my courses is, of course, English-based, because that's where the field has been for many, many years. And over time, and this is a struggle that I think that we all face, we're trying to generate new course content that is more resonant with some of students' experiences these days. So to get back to this original question, why do we care about teaching? In the beginning, I might have said, well, I care about teaching because I'm excited by this topic, and I want to share this with the students who are also excited about this topic. And over time, I would say that it's not just that, actually. It's I've come to really love and embrace the so-called anti-keeners. In fact, these are some of the best students that I've had at SFU. Maybe started off as somebody who was skeptical and more focused on, let's say, evaluative aspects of the course. But given the right ways of appealing to their diverse kind of perspectives, these anti-keeners can become just as excited about the material as some of the students that you would have thought are the best at the beginning of the course. Okay, so thank you very much. And I just want to plug out there, so if you have a young child and you'd like to do an online study, then please get in touch. I'm happy to share more information about that.
Thank you so much. That was so compelling. I love how you've fallen for the anti-keener and also given us a how to find them motivating ourselves. I think that is really inspiring. Actually, thank you so much.